Hey everybody, this is the response video to the viewer survey. You may have thought, oh hey, DW is not going to do a response video on this, he completely forgot about the viewer survey, blah blah blah. No, it's just a matter of I haven't gotten around to doing a video on the results of the survey until now, so sorry about the delay on that. Gameplay in the background is going to be of various games that I'm actually working on for review right now, so stay tuned in the relatively near future for all of these. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start delving into this thing. We're going to start with some basic statistics, and that was basically just confirming what I already know. The vast majority of you still watch just the reviews, the MTOs, or the classic reviews, or a combination thereof. Let's Plays and playthroughs have pretty low viewership rates, and it seems like they're fairly low interest as far as what I should produce more of goes. That's really not that surprising because I haven't done Let's Plays or playthroughs in quite a while. It's just something I haven't really had the time to do. So that's something I've just put to the side, and I'll go back to it when I actually have the time for. But for the time being, I just haven't had the time to do Let's Plays, especially coming up with my review schedule. As far as the rest of the basic statistics go, again, there really weren't any surprises here. The How to Fail videos were of fairly low interest to everyone. There weren't all that many people who seemed to watch them, and there wasn't all that much call for more of them. Thing is that they're sporadic anyway. I keep having to say this time and time again because there are certain people out there who seem to think that a How to Fail video actually detracts from what I'm doing. That it's somehow a waste of time as far as, say, getting more reviews out goes. Actually, it is a result of recording footage for reviews. Whenever you see a How to Fail video, it's something I'm working on for either the near future or the far future even. I'm recording footage so I can use it in the review, and if there's something in there that either doesn't get used for the review or just wouldn't really fit in the context of the review but is also somewhat amusing as a failure, then I might put it up on the channel as a How to Fail video. So they actually don't take any time or resources away from any of the major content that I'm doing. Thus, the rule of thumb there is, if you don't like the How to Fail videos, then just don't watch them. The other content on the channel fell somewhere in the middle there. Obviously, the vast majority of you watch the reviews, MTOs, and classic reviews, and then the least of you watch the How to Fail videos. Everything else was somewhere in between. Now, the other thing I threw into the statistics section is the streams, and that was just the viewership levels. Most of you don't seem to watch them, and I know that's partly because I don't really advertise them, and because they're pretty random. I don't really have a set streaming schedule because I really can't keep to a set streaming schedule. Either I'm working on reviews or I'm busy with something else. Thus, if I find I have time to do a stream, it's kind of a spur-of-the-moment decision. It's one of those things where I just decide, okay, well, let's go ahead and do a stream, why not? Thus, it stands to reason that you probably wouldn't know about the streams, so I'll see what I can do about improving that going forward. Speaking of improvements, I brought up the question of what I should do about Q&As in order to improve the lack thereof. To put it simply, I haven't been able to do a Q&A for months because I haven't had enough good questions to fill up a Q&A with. And since I haven't been able to do one for months, I went ahead and asked you, the viewers, what I should do about fixing that particular issue. Now keep in mind here, with all of the results of this, I'm just going off of what I compiled. I'm not going through every single one of your responses and reading them out verbatim. Instead, I went through all of the responses, and if it was something that someone else had already said, then I was just like, okay, I've already got that on the list, let's move on. And if it was something that was new, I added it to the list. If it was something that was completely useless, like, say, I don't know, then I just disregarded it entirely. Now then, let's go ahead and start going through the responses I got. First thing was to take questions from social media. I actually already do that, it's just that I haven't gotten any responses that would be good for Q&As lately. So that's something that's always going to be hit or miss no matter what. Next suggestion, live streams for Q&A sessions. Well, I could do that, it's just that I haven't really had all that much time to live stream, so that's kind of moot at this point. Not to mention the live stream format isn't exactly the best kind of format for a Q&A session like this. There's a delay, the questions can get lost in the chat logs, it just ends up being a mess. I'll definitely hold on to that suggestion though, just in case. Next suggestion, announcements for Q&A videos to generate questions for those videos. Well, I could do that, it's just that I would have to have Q&As on a set schedule instead of just being whenever I have enough questions. And keep in mind, the problem right now is that I don't have enough questions to do Q&A videos on, so bit iffy there. That suggestion goes hand in hand with the other suggestion I got, which was to schedule Q&As so it becomes kind of a regular fixture of the channel instead of just whenever I have enough of the questions to do a Q&A thing. So for those two things, I'm not going to disregard them entirely, it's just that they're not really feasible at this exact moment. If I start getting a bunch of questions that I can actually make a regular schedule out of, then I might start putting it into a proper schedule as opposed to just doing it whenever I have enough questions. Next suggestion, point to the Steam group more, because I take questions from the Steam group as well. I already have a link to the Steam group in every single one of my videos, so if you don't see it there, then that's honestly kind of your fault. I know a lot of people do not read the video description box, but you should. Next suggestion is a Discord channel for the server and being able to take questions from the Discord server. Actually, that's something that's being worked on, so stay tuned for that. Next suggestion, put questions at the end of videos. Well, the issue there is that most people don't really stick around once the review is finished, so putting questions at the end of videos would be a bit counterintuitive. The next suggestion was kind of odd. Answer questions that nobody's asking. I'm guessing whoever put that one in there was referring to, well, if you come across an interesting topic and you want to talk about it, then just talk about it. But if I'm doing something like that, then that's an MTO and not a Q&A. Next suggestion was something that's just not feasible, which is to put more questions in every single Q&A video. Well, I already did that before and I ran low on questions, so I ended up reducing it down to 5 questions per video, which ended up working out a lot better. And since I'm having trouble actually getting questions right now, then I'm not going to go ahead and try to put more into videos. That would just be very counterintuitive. And the last 2 suggestions for Q&As were to note the questions that are in the given Q&As in the video descriptions. I will certainly be doing that going forward, but people don't read the video descriptions, so that's kind of a problem. And finally, a collected document of all of the questions that have already been asked. I am working on that. I don't have an ETA for it, but I am working on it, so just stay tuned for whenever that goes live. The next topic of discussion was the tabletop series, what your thoughts or suggestions were for that. And I got 2 general responses. The first of them was the responses of, I don't watch the tabletop series, and there were a variety of reasons for this. Several people responded with, it's just not their kind of thing, and in that case I totally understand. If you don't like tabletops, then you're not going to watch the tabletop series. It's no big deal. A lot of people aren't even aware that the tabletop series is a thing. Now, I understand that it's a highly irregular series. It only comes out when I really have time to do it, and I have a good topic for it, but at the same time, there's also the issue of YouTube just kind of eating subscriptions. I don't know if you've run into this problem, but for some baffling reason, it doesn't always show all the videos that your subscribers are producing. So for a lot of people, they're simply not aware of it because it just doesn't show up in their subscriber feed, and if you're subscribed and it's doing that, then I do have a playlist of all of the tabletop videos, so you may want to take a look at that. Now, all that said, those who have seen the videos do seem to enjoy them. I got a lot of responses that were very positive for the tabletop series, and I got a few suggestions for games to cover as well as topics to cover. So let's go ahead and go through those real quick. First off, games to cover: Shadowrun, Savage Lands, and the Cyberpunk series, so Cyberpunk 2020 and all that sort of thing. I do want to cover all of those at some point, but I definitely don't have any sort of ETA on any of those, so you're just going to have to stay tuned for that. And as far as topics to cover, a couple of people asked about GMing tips and explanations of what a GM is and all that sort of thing. I will be doing a video on that at some point as well. Again, I don't have an ETA for it, but it's definitely going to happen. Now, the other suggestions I got were to start a campaign for the series. The problem with that is that I just don't really have the time or energy to be a GM right now. It actually requires quite a bit of time and effort to put together a campaign and to run a campaign, because you have a lot you need to keep track of, and you need to have plans for the future as well as contingency plans for when things inevitably go south. And while I'm not ruling out that possibility in its entirety, I'm definitely not in a good mindset for that right now, so it would have to be something that would come along later on. The other suggestion I got was a bit more feasible. It was games with subscribers who have Tabletop Simulator. Now, the issue with that would be trying to organize it. Now, I'm not going to rule out the possibility entirely, because it's certainly a possibility. It's just that I'd have to figure out a good way to do it. So if I can figure out a good way to organize those games, then I will see about trying to do those. Unfortunately, that was about the entirety of the suggestions I got for the Tabletop series. I think a lot of that is just from the fact that the vast majority of you just haven't seen it. Now, if you're one of the people who said you don't like tabletop role-playing games, know that the Tabletop series is not exclusive to tabletop role-playing games. That's just what I've covered so far. There's certainly other kinds of tabletop games that I can cover on that series, so if you're into, say, card games, but you aren't into tabletop role-playing games, then you might just have to wait for the card game episodes. And if you have any suggestions for that sort of thing, then definitely toss them my way as well. The only exception there would be CCGs like, say, Magic the Gathering. I barely know how to play those, and I don't even like them, so I'm not going to cover them on the channel. Deck builders like Legendary might be covered though. Anyway, if you have any further suggestions for the tabletop series, feel free to toss those my way, and if you haven't seen them and you actually want to see them, then you should check out the playlist of the tabletop videos that I've already done. Now with all that said, let's go ahead and move on into a couple of fairly quick topics. The first of these is the social media that I use for the channel. As far as the raw data goes, more of you are following me on the Steam group than on Twitter, which means that you're getting the vast majority of the video announcements, just not so much the quick updates that I tend to post on the Twitter, because I'll just post an update saying, hey, this video is being delayed because I ran into some issues, or it's compiling now, it might be up later than usual, that sort of thing. This brings me to my next point, that most of you either find the social media useful or are fairly indifferent towards it. I didn't really get very many responses that say you don't really find it useful at all. And that was really my primary concern. If you didn't find it useful, then what was I doing wrong? But the vast majority of you are either indifferent or find it useful, so it's not really a problem. There is, however, a bit of an issue with the Steam Curator page, because those of you who do use it seem to find it fairly useful, but there's a lot of you out there who don't even know it exists. You can either find it by going to the Steam group, or I'll have a link in the video description box to where you can check out the Curator page. Because they originally set up the Curator page as a recommendation rather than a full-on review system, what I did was I just started putting videos on there that, if they're a modern review, are a 3 out of 5 or higher, or if it's a classic review, just something I actually recommend. There are a few games on there that I do recommend, but I only recommend them to fairly niche groups, so I don't outright recommend them, I put them in the informational category. And every single one of the games on the Curator page is something I have reviewed or at least done an MTO on. So in addition to the fairly short blurb you get on the Curator page, you can get a link to the full video in which I go in much more detail. So go ahead and give that a look if you haven't already, and if you find it useful, then definitely let me know. Next topic of discussion is the Patreon page for the channel. The vast majority of you who responded are not supporters of the channel on Patreon, which is not remotely a surprise to me. I treat the Patreon basically as a monthly tip jar. If you like what I'm doing, then you can contribute to the channel and help me out in making more content, and if you don't like what I'm doing, then you can ignore the Patreon entirely. That's entirely your decision, but know that any of the money I receive from Patreon goes directly back into the channel. It either goes into purchasing new equipment for the channel, whether that be things like recording hardware, or microphone stands, or something like that, or if I need to replace things like a keyboard or mouse or gamepad or something like that that actually facilitates doing the reviews for the channel, or it goes into games that will at some point be featured on the channel. Now, like I said, the vast majority of you are not supporters of the channel on Patreon. This doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is that a lot of you didn't necessarily pay attention to the instructions of the survey. What I mean by that is a handful of you responded yes on the "Are you or have you been a supporter of the channel on Patreon?" and then the responses I got to "If you answered yes to that question, how do you feel about the way it's going?" are considerably more than the people who actually said yes. So, note to self, fix that before I send out the survey this coming year. Anyway, I still did get some valuable feedback regarding the Patreon, although I got less suggestions than I'd really hoped. I had 2 questions regarding this. First off, if you said you're not a fan of it or you think the Patreon could be improved, please explain how you think so. The second question was specifically, if you said you are not a supporter on Patreon, is it because of the Patreon itself or something with my channel? In other words, is there something regarding the Patreon itself or my channel that is making you go, oh no, I don't want to contribute to the channel at all? Because if it's something about the way I run things, then I might be able to make changes to that. But the vast majority of you who respond to that question gave me one of 2 answers. The first of them is that you're not in a financially viable situation to be able to do something like that. I completely understand that. I've been in that kind of situation many a time. It's just that I wasn't really looking for that sort of information. What I was looking for there is more, do you have a problem with the Patreon itself, and if so, how can I fix that? And really the only response I got for that was to have more significant rewards for backers. Okay, but there weren't really any suggestions for possible rewards other than special privileges on a Discord server, which I might do, but I wouldn't give you anything crazy with it. It's not like I'd hand out moderator or admin status to Patreon backers just on the fact that they're Patreon backers. That'd be way too readily open to shenanigans. So if you have any good ideas for Patreon backer rewards, then definitely toss those my way. Because I get it, a sneak preview of what I've got coming up for the week ahead is not necessarily the most enticing reward. But I definitely need a lot more information than just more backer rewards, because otherwise I don't really know exactly what you might be looking into. Anyway, that was actually the only real suggestion I got for the Patreon, so let's go ahead and move on into other things that you suggested. Because I did have a couple of fairly general questions that were regarding the way I do things and what I might be able to improve in general about the channel. First suggestion, sound less depressed. Ignoring the fact that that would actually be incredibly insulting if I suffered from clinical depression, that's not something I can just do. It's not like I have a switch that I can flip that goes between various personalities. And besides that, what you're hearing as so-called depressed is probably more just the fact that I'm really tired when I'm making these videos most of the time. I mean, to give you a prime example, I'm recording this video at about 3 in the morning. I'm pretty tired. And that's just a reality of my work and sleep schedules being really weird. So there's only so much I can do about that. Plus, I'm not an extrovert, and I'm not really an optimist either, so it's not like I'm going to be super happy fun times all the time. Anyway, moving on to other suggestions, a better explanation of my review score scale, because a lot of people don't really understand it and act like, say, a 3 out of 5 is some atrocious score when it's not remotely atrocious. Now, I did already put up a video regarding my review score scale, but that was quite a while ago, and it just kind of got buried in the channel, so I'm going to be working on getting a better one out that's a bit more illustrative, and I'm also going to work on getting a better channel intro out. Because, let's face it, my channel intro is pretty crappy and needs some sprucing up. Next suggestion, audio improvements, specifically the audio mixing, because sometimes the game audio is really hard to hear, or the voice is too soft, or any number of these things that make it a bit more difficult to discern what's exactly going on at any given point in a review. I pretty much fixed that going forward, so we should be good on that front. We should also be good on this next suggestion, which is the text on screen being either too large or just not on the screen long enough. I do what I can with that, but there's only so much I can do, because the text goes up after I've finished recording the audio. So really that's more on a video by video basis, and if it's a problem for you, then sorry. Next suggestion, clips to show what I'm talking about at any given point in a review, which I already do when it's something I feel needs direct illustration. If it's something that's just general gameplay that you're going to be seeing in the footage all the time anyway, then I'm not going to bother putting up a clip actually showcasing that specific thing. If it's something you kind of had to go out of your way to show off, or it's something that's particularly cool, then I might toss a clip in there to illustrate that, but I'm not going to sit there and just say, oh hey, well, this is the inventory system, and then show you about 30 seconds of inventory. Especially since I'm only going to single out something like that if it's actually a problem. In which case, I might actually use a clip to show you how much of a problem is, but that would have to be on a case-by-case basis. Next suggestion, improve my repetitive vocabulary. That's my vernacular, I can't help it. It's not like I keep a thesaurus handy for my reviews. Can you imagine how incredibly pretentious I would sound if I kept a thesaurus handy and started using words like pulchritudinous? I'm already at the point where I'm so deadpan that people can't even tell I'm being sarcastic when it's painfully obvious I'm being sarcastic, so I don't think I'll be going too far into improving my so-called repetitive vocabulary. Next suggestion, I occasionally lose focus and start rambling. That is definitely a problem, and if it's something where there's a lot I need to talk about, more often than not I will actually put a bunch of bullet points together so I can hit those points and not just go off into a 20-minute tirade about how the characters' outfits look beyond stupid. I like to think I've gotten a lot better about the rambling in more recent times, but that's also a sort of side effect of not scripting my videos. And before you start suggesting, oh, you need to script your videos, trust me, you do not want me scripting my videos because then they would be atrocious. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the last suggestion I have for just general improvements to the channel, which is issues with mic feedback. There's only so much I can do with that. I don't have a studio set up. I don't have some sort of soundproofed environment where I'm good with recording. There's a bunch of background noise that ends up being a problem. I do what I can to work around that, but sometimes the result is less than optimal. Don't get me wrong, if I can figure out a good soundproofing solution, then I'm definitely going for it, because it actually annoys me almost as much as it does you. You may think you're a fairly harsh critic of my videos, but trust me, I'm harsher than you are. And speaking of harsh, that was the last of the general improvement suggestions that I received, so let's go ahead and delve right into general gripes or comments that you had about me or the way I do things on the channel or any number of things like that. To those of you who keep telling me to keep doing what I'm doing and that you're enjoying the content and I'm your favorite reviewer, all that sort of thing, whatever it may well be, thank you very much. I really do appreciate those comments. Especially when you consider some of the other comments I got in this section, but we'll get to those in a moment. I had a few people ask me to do a face reveal. It's not happening, so please stop asking. I had one suggestion to talk more about the gameplay and story instead of presentation, which is exactly what I do anyway, so that one actually amused me quite a bit. I had a few comments back and forth on the general length of my videos, because some of them are fairly long. I mean, the Fallout 4 review was about 2 hours long. That is a ridiculously long time for a video review, yes. But here's the thing. No matter what length the videos are going to be, you can't please everyone. If I make the videos longer, then the people who like them shorter are going to complain that they're too long. If I make them shorter, the people who like them longer are going to complain that they're too short. And if I stay somewhere in the middle, like I've been mostly doing, then I get complaints from both sides of the equation. Although I have found that the people who prefer the longer style of videos don't really complain anywhere near as much as the people who complain about the videos being longer. So the short version is, I'm just going to stick to the same video length that I've been doing. Some of the videos are going to be longer, some of them are going to be shorter. It just depends on how much I have to say about insert game here. Now we're going to start getting into the more negative comments. Things like, you try too hard to dislike everything, which is a patently false statement. I don't try to dislike anything. That would be incredibly stupid. In fact, the exact opposite happens. I try to enjoy every single game that I feature on the channel. Whether or not I end up enjoying it depends entirely on the game in question. Other comments I got regarding negativity include things like maybe toning down the negativity in my survey next year. I'm guessing you mean that joke question I put in there, which was, does DW hate everything? And the only answer was no. Apparently, I'm not allowed to have a sense of humor anymore. That's actually pretty depressing. That leads me into the next kind of comment I got, which was, be less snarky. To which I repeat, apparently I'm not allowed to have a sense of humor anymore. I think part of the problem is that people often take sarcasm or snarky responses as a personal insult directed at them. Fact of the matter is that when I'm not being sarcastic or snarky, I have a very blunt and direct manner of speech. Unfortunately, that doesn't always translate very well to text form. That's not to say that it's always a misunderstanding. There are a lot of instances where people are being obnoxious and I'm just not taking any of their crap. Thing is, I used to give people the benefit of the doubt whenever they started being obnoxious with me because I thought maybe they were just in a really bad mood when they wrote that particular comment, or they didn't necessarily think things all the way through, so I give them a chance to redeem themselves. And when they inevitably fail that test, I don't take any of their crap because I deal with enough crap from people at work. I don't need that crap on my channel. And more recently, I've just decided, you know what, screw it. If you're gonna just be obnoxious on my channel, I'm just gonna block you. So that addresses the snarky comment as well as the comments I got about my temper or attitude. So let's go ahead and finish up the video with even more negativity. I have to read these two comments exactly as they are because they just amuse me. The first of them is, even though you're asking for feedback, you are going to ignore, so your whole survey thing is pointless. I'm sure you feel like a prophet right now. And last but not least, my personal favorite of the bunch. You just cannot admit you are wrong when you clearly are. I'm not joking, that is exactly how the comment is written. It amused the hell out of me. Fact of the matter is that I actually am open to being proven wrong. The issue is that people skip the proving part and just say I'm wrong. If you can't back up your statement with anything more than you're a big mean doo-doo head, then I'm not going to take it seriously and I'm going to completely disregard your claim that I'm wrong. So the short version is, if I'm wrong, you need to have something backing it up, and it better be something really compelling. For example, if you're going to start throwing around sales records and say, well, because it sold extremely well, it must be amazing, then you're completely missing the point of sales being more of a factor of marketing than a factor of quality. I mean, to give you a prime example, Avatar and Titanic are the two top grossing movies of all time, and Titanic is terrible and Avatar is a very mediocre but very pretty film. You gotta keep in mind, when I'm criticizing games, I've played those games. I know how they are. And if you say something that's not even in the same realm of reality as what I experienced when I was playing the game, then I'm going to call you out on it. But like I said, it's not like you're going up against something that literally cannot be convinced at all. You just have your work cut out for you in that instance. And speaking of having your work cut out for you, I have a lot of stuff I need to work on for the channel this year, so I'm going to go ahead and get right back to it. As far as the immediate future goes, I am working on Mass Effect Andromeda, and I anticipate being able to finish it within the next maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Turns out there is an absolute crap ton of content, and I've been getting wrapped up in all the side content as opposed to going through the main story, so I'm going to try to get through as much of the major side content as I can, and then go back and actually finish the main plot before I finally get the review done. Hence me saying it could be another couple of weeks before I get that review out. But it is on its way, and it will be happening at some point in the month of April. And if all goes well, I will have a major announcement for you this coming week, so stay tuned for that. I'd like to thank all of you who responded to the survey again for the feedback that you gave me. I will be making some changes as a result of this feedback, and any more feedback you'd like to toss my way would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you all in later videos.